I never thought my work anniversary would turn into the most dangerous day of my life. That morning, when Richard walked up to my desk with a wide smile plastered across his face, I almost laughed out loud. For 5 years, this man had done nothing but undermine me, criticize my reports, and blame me for every project delay. He'd never smiled at me, not once. Not when I saved the Henderson account. Not when I worked 14-hour days to meet his impossible deadlines. So seeing him stand there, grinning like we were old friends, made my stomach twist. "Congratulations on 5 years, Madison," he said, his voice dripping with fake warmth. "We should celebrate." I forced myself to smile back while my mind raced. Richard Coleman didn't celebrate other people's achievements. He stole them. Just yesterday, he'd screamed at me in front of 2 senior managers, trying to pin the entire shipping delay on my department. I'd fought back with spreadsheets and timestamps that proved his logistics team had dropped the ball. He'd stormed out, face burning red. Now here he stood, acting like yesterday never happened. The conference room fight had been brutal. Richard had ambushed me during the quarterly review, slamming his palm on the table. Madison's team failed to coordinate with shipping, he'd announced to everyone present. That's why we lost 3 days on the Morrison delivery. I'd stood up slowly, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. "Actually, Richard, I have the email chain right here showing your team confirmed the wrong warehouse address." I'd pulled up the messages on my laptop, projecting them onto the screen. Date stamps, his logistics manager's signature, everything. The 2 senior managers, Patricia and Frank, had exchanged meaningful looks. Richard's jaw had clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. "This isn't over," he'd hissed as the meeting ended. I'd walked out with my head high, knowing I'd finally exposed his incompetence. That was yesterday afternoon. Less than 18 hours ago, he'd looked ready to destroy me. Now he wanted to celebrate? My instincts screamed danger, but I kept my expression neutral, professional. Whatever game he was playing, I needed to understand it before making my next move. Richard leaned closer, lowering his voice like we were sharing a secret. "Listen, Madison, I want to handle things between us. Yesterday got out of hand." The word handle stuck in my throat like broken glass. Handle things? What did that mean? In 5 years, Richard had never apologized for anything. Not for taking credit for my proposals. Not for scheduling meetings during my vacation days. Not for telling clients I was still learning when I had more experience than half his team. "I appreciate that," I managed, keeping my tone light. He clasped his hands together, that plastic smile never wavering. Good. We'll have a proper celebration later. Just you and me, private, to clear the air." Every alarm bell in my head went off at once. Private celebration? With Richard, the man who once told HR that women were too emotional for leadership roles? My mouth felt dry, but I nodded. "Sounds great." He winked, and walked away, whistling. I sat frozen at my desk, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Something was very, very wrong. Richard Coleman didn't forgive. He didn't forget, and he definitely didn't apologize. By 2 p.m., Richard had set up a small anniversary celebration in the corner conference room. A grocery store cake sat on the table next to paper plates and plastic forks. 2 sad balloons bobbed against the ceiling. It looked thrown together in minutes, which made sense. Richard had probably forgotten my anniversary entirely until this morning. But what caught my attention was his briefcase. That dark leather briefcase he carried everywhere, treated like it contained nuclear codes. He'd set it on the chair beside him, one hand resting protectively on the handle. I'd seen him carry that briefcase for years. Once, an intern had bumped into him and knocked it over. Richard had screamed so loud that security came running. The intern was gone the next day. Now that same briefcase sat 3 feet away from me, and Richard kept glancing at it like he was checking it was still there. 5 years is quite an achievement," he said, cutting the cake with shaky hands. "Not many people last that long." The way he said last made my skin crawl. I accepted my slice of cake, took one bite of the dry vanilla sponge, and watched him fidget with his briefcase lock. Richard's phone rang, and he stepped into the hallway to answer it. The second the door closed, I moved. My hands trembled as I reached for the briefcase. If he caught me, I'd be fired instantly. Maybe worse, given how protective he was of this thing. but I had to know what was making him act so strange. The latches clicked open easier than expected. Inside, wrinkled dress shirts lay on top, stained with coffee and sweat. Underneath those, manila folders full of what looked like legal documents. I lifted the folders carefully, making sure I could put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Divorce papers. I scanned them quickly. His wife was leaving him, taking the house, demanding alimony. The court date was set for next week. That explained some of his recent mood swings, but not today's bizarre behavior. I kept digging, aware that Richard could return any second. My fingers brushed something cold and smooth at the bottom of the case, a small glass vial carefully wrapped in cloth. My blood turned to ice when I read the label. This wasn't just strange anymore. This was dangerous, and I was running out of time to figure out why he had it. Scopolamine. The word on the vial made my hands shake so hard I nearly dropped it. I knew that name from true crime podcasts. They called it Devil's Breath, a drug that erased free will and memory. Victims couldn't resist commands. They'd empty their bank accounts, sign over property deeds, or worse, all while appearing conscious but completely unable to control themselves. Next to the vial sat a roll of duct tape, heavy-duty silver kind. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. Everything clicked into place with horrible clarity. Richard's sudden friendliness, his insistence on a private celebration, the way he kept watching that briefcase. He wasn't planning to apologize. He was planning something much worse. I photographed everything with my phone, hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get clear pictures. Then I carefully replaced each item exactly as I'd found it, closed the latches, and moved back to my seat. My cake sat untouched, chocolate frosting melting in the warm room. Richard returned, ending his call with obvious frustration. "Sorry about that," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "Where were we?" I forced myself to smile. "You were telling me about 5 years being quite an achievement." I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. My reflection in the mirror looked pale, eyes wide with fear. But I couldn't panic. Panicking would get me hurt or worse. I needed to think clearly. Richard was planning to drug me. The duct tape suggested he wanted to restrain me too. But why? Yesterday's confrontation had been bad, but not drug and kidnap bad. Unless there was more to this. Unless his divorce and his crumbling reputation had pushed him over some edge I couldn't see. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, speaking in whispers. "I'm at Parker Industries, 1400 Vine Street. My boss has scopolamine and duct tape in his briefcase. I think he's planning to drug me. Please send officers immediately but quietly. 3rd floor, conference room 3B. The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. "We're sending units now. Can you get somewhere safe?" "I have to go back," I whispered. "If I run, he'll know something's wrong. He might do something worse." "Officers will be there in 8 minutes. Try to stay in view of others." 8 minutes. I could survive 8 minutes. I splashed cold water on my face, steadied my breathing, and walked back to Richard. Richard barely looked up when I returned. He was scrolling through his phone, jaw clenched at whatever he was reading, probably more divorce lawyer emails. I sat down and picked up my plastic fork, pretending to eat the cake while watching him carefully. "You know, Madison," he said suddenly, setting down his phone. "I've been thinking about our working relationship. 5 years is a long time to have misunderstandings." I nodded, not trusting my voice. He continued, his eyes never leaving mine. "Sometimes people need fresh starts, clean slates. Sometimes we need to handle problems directly." There was that word again, handle. "I agree," I managed, glancing at the clock. 5 more minutes until the police arrived. "Good." He stood up, grabbing his briefcase. "Let's take a walk. The balcony has a nice view. We can talk about your future with the company." The balcony. 4th floor, completely isolated from the rest of the office. No cameras, no witnesses. If he drugged me there, he could claim I jumped. My mouth went dry. "Actually," I said, thinking fast, "it's such a nice day. Could we walk outside instead? The parking lot has that garden area." Richard's eyes narrowed for a split second before his fake smile returned. "The parking lot?" "Fresh air helps me think clearly," I said, standing up slowly, "and I'd love to discuss my future properly." He considered this, fingers drumming against his briefcase. The parking lot was more public than the balcony, but still isolated enough for whatever he was planning. After a long moment, He nodded. Fine. Let's go. We walked through the office in silence. My coworkers barely glanced up from their computers. To them, this looked normal, a boss and employee heading out for a work discussion. Nobody could see my racing heart or the sweat beating on my forehead. Richard's hand never left his briefcase. As we entered the stairwell, he moved behind me. After you, he said, but it felt more like a command than courtesy. I descended slowly, counting each step, calculating how many minutes had passed. The police should be here any moment. We reached the parking lot exit and Richard pushed the door open. The afternoon sun hit my face, momentarily blinding me. That's when I heard it. Distant, but getting closer. Sirens. Richard heard them too. His face went white, then red. Did you? But he cut himself off, forcing that smile back onto his face. Probably just an accident on the highway. We walked toward the garden area, a small patch of grass with 2 benches surrounded by bushes, isolated enough that nobody from the building could see us clearly. Perfect for him. Perfect for me too if the police were watching. Sit, Richard said, gesturing to the bench. It wasn't a request. I sat, keeping my hands visible, trying to look calm. The sirens were getting louder. Richard set his briefcase on the bench and opened it, his body blocking my view. When he turned back to me, he was holding a white handkerchief. You know, Madison, he said, stepping closer. Sometimes people need help forgetting unpleasant things, like yesterday's meeting, like those emails you showed everyone. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. Richard, what are you doing? He lunged forward, pressing the handkerchief toward my face. The sweet, chemical smell hit my nostrils. I tried to turn away, but his other hand grabbed the back of my head, holding me in place. The drug hit my system fast. The world tilted sideways, colors bleeding together like wet paint. My arms felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. But through the fog, I heard the sirens screaming into the parking lot, tires squealing on asphalt. Richard cursed, dropping the handkerchief. He looked between me and the approaching police cars, calculating his chances. Then he ran. Even with my head spinning and my legs feeling like jelly, I couldn't let him escape. I lunged forward, managing to grab his ankle. We both went down hard on the concrete. He kicked at me, trying to break free, his briefcase spilling open. The vial rolled across the ground, glinting in the sunlight. Let go, he screamed, but I held on with everything I had left. My vision was going dark around the edges, but I could hear boots pounding on pavement, voices shouting, "Police! Don't move!" Richard tried one more desperate kick, but it was too late. 3 officers surrounded us, weapons drawn. One pulled Richard to his feet, while another knelt beside me. "Ma'am, are you okay? What did he give you?" "Scopolamine," I managed to say before the world went completely black. I woke up in the back of an ambulance, an oxygen mask over my face. A paramedic was checking my vitals while a police officer sat nearby with a notebook. Through the open doors, I could see Richard in handcuffs, being pushed into a squad car. He was screaming something I couldn't make out, his face twisted with rage. "Welcome back," the paramedic said, noticing my eyes were open. "You're lucky. The dose wasn't full strength, and you got medical attention quickly." The officer leaned forward. "Madison, I'm Detective Santos. Can you tell me what happened?" I pulled off the oxygen mask, my voice coming out rough. "Check his briefcase. There's a vial of scopolamine and duct tape. He tried to drug me, said we were going to discuss my future." The detective nodded, making notes. "We found everything. We also found something else, a suicide note template on his phone. Your name was already filled in." My blood went cold again. He hadn't just planned to drug me, he'd planned to kill me and make it look like I'd killed myself. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would he do this?" The detective's expression was grim. "We're still investigating, but we have some theories." 2 hours later, I was at the police station, giving my full statement. Detective Santos had laid out the evidence they'd found, and the picture it painted was terrifying. Richard's phone contained drafted emails from my account, which he planned to send after drugging me, admitting to embezzlement and expressing guilt over stealing from the company. He'd created fake financial records showing money transfers to accounts he'd set up in my name. The suicide note would have sealed it. I would have been found dead, branded a thief, my reputation destroyed. Richard would have played the shocked boss who never saw it coming. "But why?" I asked again. "What did I do to deserve this?" Santos pulled up another document on his tablet. Did you know Richard was being investigated for embezzlement himself? I shook my head, stunned. The board hired external auditors last month. They found discrepancies going back 3 years. Your confrontation yesterday, where you proved he'd been lying about the shipping delays, was apparently the final straw. He knew you were smart enough to figure out what he'd been doing. So he decided to frame you for his crimes. Everything made horrible sense now. Richard hadn't snapped because of his divorce or the meeting. He'd been planning this carefully, setting me up to take the fall. The detective continued showing me evidence. Richard's browser history revealed weeks of research on scopolamine, its effects, and how to obtain it. He'd visited dark web marketplaces using his work computer. Amateur mistake that IT would have eventually caught. He'd also researched my routine, my medical history, even my family members. The man had been studying me like I was prey. This morning, Santos explained, his wife served him divorce papers at 7 a.m. She's claiming emotional abuse and financial fraud. She hired a forensic accountant who found the embezzled funds. Richard knew the walls were closing in. I thought about his fake smile this morning, the forced cheerfulness. He'd already decided I would die today. The anniversary celebration was just a cover story. We also found this, Santos said, showing me a photo from Richard's phone. It was a picture of me from yesterday's meeting, taken without my knowledge. He'd written underneath, "She knows too much." My hand started shaking again. How long was he planning this? Based on the evidence, at least 2 weeks. The scopolamine was ordered online 10 days ago. 10 days. I'd been working next to him for 10 days while he planned my murder. By evening, the story had exploded through the office. Parker Industries sent out a company-wide email announcing Richard's termination and arrest. They promised a full investigation and increased security measures. My phone buzzed with messages from coworkers expressing shock and support. Some admitted they'd always found Richard unsettling but never imagined he was capable of attempted murder. Patricia, one of the senior managers from yesterday's meeting, called me personally. "Madison, I'm so sorry. We should have seen the signs. Richard's behavior had been escalating for months, but we thought it was just stress from his divorce." I sat in my apartment, doors locked, still processing everything. The local news was already running the story. Local executive arrested for attempted murder of employee. They showed Richard's photo from the company website, professional headshot, confident smile. You'd never know from looking at him. But I knew now. I knew that behind that smile was someone who'd spent weeks planning to drug me, frame me, and kill me. All to cover up his own crimes. The detective had assured me Richard would likely face 20 to life if convicted. The evidence was overwhelming, but that didn't make me feel safe. It just made me realize how close I'd come to disappearing. The next morning, I returned to Parker Industries to collect my belongings and meet with HR. The building felt different now. Every shadow could hide danger. Every friendly face might mask sinister intentions. But I walked in with my head high. I'd survived. The HR director, Grace, met me with tears in her eyes. "Madison, I can't express how sorry we are. The company failed to protect you." She outlined the settlement they were offering: paid leave, therapy coverage, and a substantial sum to avoid litigation. I accepted it all. I'd earned it. "There's more," Grace said, sliding another document across the table. "The board wants to offer you Richard's position. They were impressed by how you handled yesterday's meeting and, well, they feel it's the least they can do. Director of Operations. The job Richard had gatekept for years, telling everyone I wasn't ready." I looked at the offer, then back at Grace. "I need time to think about it." She nodded. "Of course, take all the time you need." As I packed my desk, coworkers approached one by one. Some hugged me, others just stood there, not knowing what to say. How do you comfort someone who almost died at work? That evening, I sat with my laptop, reading through the files the detective had shared. Richard's embezzlement went deeper than anyone had realized. $3 million over 3 years, hidden through fake vendor accounts and inflated invoices. He'd been bleeding the company dry while blaming his department's failures on everyone else, especially me. I found my name mentioned dozens of times in his notes. Every time I'd caught a mistake, questioned a number, or pushed back on his decisions, he documented it as interference or insubordination. He'd been building a case against me long before he decided to frame me for his crimes. The irony was that I'd been protecting the company all along. Every time I'd fought Richard on his numbers, I'd been preventing him from stealing more. The shipping delay controversy that triggered everything? Richard had been trying to hide a $200,000 discrepancy in logistics costs. My spreadsheets had exposed it without me even realizing what I'd found. I pulled up the email from Patricia, sent an hour ago. Madison, the forensic audit revealed that your diligence saved the company over $500,000 in potential losses. You were the only one asking the right questions. The only one. And it had nearly gotten me killed. A week passed. Richard was denied bail after prosecutors argued he was a flight risk and danger to witnesses, meaning me. His assets were frozen, his passport confiscated. His wife had filed for emergency divorce proceedings and won temporary custody of their assets. I heard through the office grapevine that she'd known about his temper, his lies, but never imagined he was capable of attempted murder. Meanwhile, I was seeing a therapist twice a week, trying to process the trauma. You saved yourself, she kept reminding me. Your instincts, your quick thinking, your courage. You're the hero of this story. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who'd narrowly avoided becoming a statistic. Every night, I dreamed about that handkerchief coming toward my face, the sweet chemical smell, the world tilting sideways. Some mornings, I woke up gasping, checking my arms for restraints that weren't there. The therapist said it was normal. PTSD from workplace violence. She said it would get better with time. I wanted to believe her. But every time I saw a leather briefcase or smelled anything vaguely sweet, my heart started racing. Richard had tried to erase me. He'd failed. But he'd left scars that might never fully heal. And somewhere in a jail cell, he was probably still planning his defense, still believing he was the victim. The trial date was set for 3 months out. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Diane Foster, walked me through what to expect. Your testimony is crucial, she explained. The physical evidence is strong, but the jury needs to hear your story. They need to understand the calculated nature of his plan. I agreed to testify, though the thought terrified me. Facing Richard again, even in a courtroom, made my stomach churn. But I had to do it, not just for justice, but for closure. Meanwhile, Parker Industries underwent massive changes. They hired a consulting firm to review all financial records going back 5 years. 3 more employees were fired for various irregularities. Richard had helped them hide in exchange for their silence about his schemes. The company implemented new whistleblower protections and mandatory psychological evaluations for senior management. They named the new policies the Madison Protocols, which felt surreal. My name attached to safety measures that might prevent future workplace violence. The board president called it turning tragedy into progress. But I just saw it as too little, too late. Still, I accepted the director position. Not because I forgave the company, but because I'd earned it. Because Richard had tried to take everything from me, and I refused to let him win. My first day as director of operations felt like reclaiming stolen territory. I sat in Richard's old office, now mine, and removed every trace of him. His awards went in the trash. His motivational posters came down. I replaced them with plants and photos of landscapes, things that reminded me life existed beyond these walls. The team seemed nervous around me at first. Was I traumatized? Vindictive? Would I be paranoid and suspicious of everyone? But I ran meetings with calm professionalism, made decisions based on data, not ego, and actually listened when people raised concerns. Within 2 weeks, productivity increased by 15%. Turns out, when employees don't fear their boss might frame them for embezzlement, they work better. Who knew? Patricia stopped by one afternoon with coffee and a smile. You're already better at this than Richard ever was, she said. The board is impressed. I'm just doing the job properly, I replied. Something Richard never actually did. She laughed, but it was tinged with sadness. We should have seen it, Madison. The signs were all there. Maybe they were. Or maybe predators like Richard were just good at hiding until cornered. Either way, I was done looking backward. This was my office now. 6 weeks into my new role, I got an unexpected call. Richard's wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, Victoria, wanted to meet. Against my lawyer's advice, I agreed. We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown, both of us looking older than our years. I wanted to apologize, Victoria said immediately. I knew Richard had problems, his temper, his lies, his need to control everything. But I never thought he'd try to hurt someone. I stirred my coffee, unsure how to respond. The morning he got the divorce papers, she continued, he was calm. Too calm. He said he had a plan to fix everything. I thought he meant hiring a better lawyer. I never imagined. She trailed off, tears in her eyes. You couldn't have known, I said, surprising myself with the compassion in my voice. No, she agreed, but I should have warned people about his escalation. The holes he punched in walls, the threats he made when he thought I was sleeping. I was so focused on getting myself out safely that I didn't think about who else might be in danger. We sat in silence for a moment. Two women whose lives Richard had tried to destroy in different ways. Both of us had survived, but the scars remained. The trial arrived faster than expected. I wore my best suit, the navy one that made me feel powerful. Richard sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his attorney beside him. He'd lost weight, his face gaunt and hollow. When our eyes met, he smiled. That same fake smile from my anniversary day. I didn't look away. On the witness stand, I told my story clearly and calmly. The prosecutor walked me through each moment, from the morning greeting to the handkerchief attack. Richard's attorney tried to paint me as paranoid, suggested I'd misinterpreted innocent actions. But the evidence was overwhelming. The vial of scopolamine, the duct tape, the fake suicide note, the embezzlement frame job, the browser history showing weeks of planning. The jury took less than 2 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, attempted kidnapping, embezzlement, fraud. 25 to life with no possibility of parole for 15 years. As they led Richard away, he turned to look at me one last time. No smile now, just rage and disbelief that his plan had failed, that I'd survived, that I'd won. I walked out of that courtroom feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Free. Finally, truly free. A year has passed since my work anniversary turned into a nightmare. The company thrives under new leadership, my leadership. The Madison protocols have prevented 3 potential workplace violence incidents at other branches. My story became a case study in corporate security training nationwide. I still see a therapist monthly, more for maintenance than crisis now. The nightmares faded, the jumpiness at sudden movements decreased. I learned to trust again, carefully and with boundaries. Richard's old office, my office, no longer feels haunted. It's filled with life now. Employee achievement photos, thank you cards from clients, a small plaque that reads, "Trust your instincts," that my team gave me. Sometimes new employees ask about what happened. I tell them the truth. A dangerous man tried to destroy me because I exposed his crimes. But preparation and quick thinking saved my life. Always document everything. Always trust your gut. Always have an exit strategy. The anniversary date approaches again. This time, there will be no forced celebration, no fake smiles, no leather briefcases hiding deadly secrets. Just me, doing my job well, surrounded by people who value competence over control. Richard wanted to erase me. Instead, he erased himself. And I'm still here, stronger than ever, proof that survival is the ultimate revenge. Last week, I received a letter forwarded through my attorney. Richard had written from prison, asking for forgiveness, claiming he'd been sick, stressed, not himself. I read it once, then shredded it. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some people don't deserve second chances. The young woman who replaced Richard's assistant stopped by yesterday with a question about protocols. As she stood there, nervous and eager, I saw myself 5 years ago. Competent but unaware of the dangers that could lurk behind professional smiles. "Can I give you some advice?" I asked. She nodded quickly. "Document everything. Save emails. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And never, ever be alone with someone who makes you uncomfortable, no matter their position." She thanked me and left, probably thinking I was paranoid. Maybe I am, but paranoid and alive beats trusting and dead. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Work anniversary, 6 years. I deleted it. Some anniversaries aren't worth celebrating, but some victories are worth remembering. Every single day I walk into this office is a victory. Every decision I make that Richard can't corrupt is a victory. every employee who feels safe because of the protocols my trauma created is a victory. Today marks exactly 1 year since I called 911 from that bathroom, whispering about scopolamine and duct tape while trying not to panic. The woman who made that call feels like a stranger now, someone who still believed in giving dangerous people the benefit of the doubt. Now, I know better. Trust is earned in drops and lost in gallons. Richard taught me that. But he also taught me something more valuable. I'm stronger than any threat, smarter than any scheme, and braver than I ever imagined. The briefcase that almost ended my life sits in evidence lockup somewhere, gathering dust. The vial that could have erased my will is cataloged and filed away. The man who planned my murder makes license plates or whatever prisoners do these days. And me? I'm running a department that generates 30% more revenue than it did under Richard's control. I'm mentoring young professionals who will never have to face what I faced. I'm living proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate planning or clever schemes. Sometimes it's simply refusing to disappear. Richard wanted to handle things? Well, I handled them instead. With one phone call, one moment of clarity, one decision to trust my instincts when everything felt wrong. That's my story. That's my survival. That's my victory.